Nice. That we may all live our dreams. Thank you. That's our mantra, that's our motto, that's our drive, and that is why we wake up early in the morning on Power Monday to help in whichever way we can share knowledge, information that people may be able to live their dreams. So, welcome to this platform. My name is Otieno Paul Peter, your host and moderator for today. I want to welcome Udhiambulale to introduce the speaker, and there we get started on with this important topic. All of us have done some construction, hata kama ni ile ya kuku ama whatever it may be, rack. And enough times we miss or we make mistakes and we regret, or at least we plan to do that. And that is the topic for today. So, Odhiambolale, are you there?
I am there. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You
Good
can
morning.
hear me loud and clear.
Loud and clear.
Karibuni wote. And before I introduce our speaker, I must say that this topic is very, very close to my heart for many reasons. One is my dad was an architect with the National Housing Corporation. And we grew up with seeing our dad doing private job in the office or in the house where one bedroom was turned into a converted into a drawing office. So we would see him drawing all these houses for people, private, outside the office. So I'm very close to that. And I look forward to what we are going to learn from Brother Evans Onyancha. With he has 3 decades of experience in construction, and he is well versed in several aspects of construction. His experience spans in building construction works, home repair and maintenance, earth-moving machinery, ready-mix concrete works, welding, carpentry, and door manufacturing. He has a proven record in delivering several successful projects. He is not only an expert in identifying common mistakes in construction, but is also a strategist in project implementation. He will be discussing on common mistakes in construction and revealing the Fundi's shortcuts and what you can do about it. So with that short introduction, may I welcome Brother Evans Onyancha to give us more details. Asanteni sana.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Yes, Houseman. And Houseman has very beautiful stories. I hope you will also tell that story of where the name Houseman.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Morning, OPP, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
We have a long journey. We started from far.
Yeah, I
So
also
thank
got to
you.
know. I also got to know somebody when I shared the flyer. This is Ndolo David. He tells me he knew you 25 years ago.
You should have known me 54 years ago. Yes, thank you very much. As you've clearly highlighted, construction number one is a very wide project, is a topic which cannot be covered within this period. So what we are going to do is just have a very shallow touch up on what it entails. And above it, I will highlight on the pitfalls in construction and probably how we can avoid them. So I'll make it very fast and very short because construction ideally brings about more questions than answers. And I'm going to share some highlights of my experiences and perhaps me being the person talking about what are the pitfalls. You know very well that some of these things you may end up having practiced them for you to be able to discuss or to talk about them. And also highlight on my Damascus moment so that we also get both sides of construction story. And I'll start by saying I went back in my primary school in Kisii, a school called Bondeka, and Friday afternoons were reserved for punishment days. So you do all the mistakes in the week, and on Friday is when you're punished. So to avoid pain on those days, what I decided was I, I had to literally cut my short. At the back, the canes land on your buttocks. So I had to find a way of and cutting the short so that it can be stitched. Then at the stitching point is where now you bring a kagunia, you patch it together with the shorts. That meant you start learning very early how to avoid pain. And I'll probably highlight what it comes about with that. Then fast forward uh, some years back, around 97 or thereabout, I had a cousin of mine who had gone to buy a pair of shorts in Gikomba, a trouser. So when he came back at home, he discovered he had actually bought rags, not the trouser. And I decided, let me engage what really happened. I thought, how would you buy a rag instead of a trouser? So I went back to Gikomba to do a fact-finding mission. And for me to get involved, I went to some of the guys who do sales, and I offered to be selling the trousers for them or some form of clothing. So in the process, I asked, how is this game played? And they recruited me in that game. Uh, Basically, it has like four players in that scenario. One is the one who's selling you the trouser. The other one, there's a player, the guy is called an anchor. He's the one who's carrying a prepacked rags. And then there's one who's there to give you change. You see this guy who's selling you the trouser, he'll move aside and tell you, Nani, you're gonna change apple. And then there's this other guy who's your distractor. The distractor is the one who will be carrying, he'll be watching you when you're buying. So he brings up a cloth similar to the one you're buying. And this one is the camera. This is now, he tells you, turn your focus to me. So that's the guy they call the camera. And that's why, that's the name why the camera, Ngoza camera. And that's how they come about. So I was the camera guy. So Mimi ndio distractor. So these are games we learned so that later you may end up using them. Then, in after my fourth form, I got engaged in doing some construction works, mtu wa mkono kwa site. So in the evening, we could pick the rubbles from the site and use them to patch the road on Kamiti Road, if near Zimmerman. Anybody who knows that area, there's a section which is, because of water, normally gets very damaged. So what we could do is I would carry the rubbles, one or two of us, we go to the road and we wait for guys who are passing and we ask for money. So we patch the road. Then in the evening, we clear the same rubbles so that we have potholes the following day to ask for more money. So in the process, some guys who are passing by thought like we look really like fundis because you have a wheelbarrow and all that. So they will end up giving assignments in their homes, particularly the road into the home. So they'll end up telling us, come and do for me this and this. So in the end, they would think like we are workers or, we understand the job. So they would give us a job. So I got a job courtesy of, being involved in the small works around the homestead. Finally, there's a situation where I employed myself into a job. I joined a queue of people who were already working, and I ended up being given a job on the same day. or rather, by evening, they had recruited me unknowingly, and I continued working there. But eventually, it was a hotel. Actually, it was a hotel. It's an intercontinental hotel. So eventually, I landed a job there as a lifesaver in a swimming pool. Never mind, I never knew how to swim. So I could dress the t-shirt of lifesaver on duty, and I'm there. You see, I did my calculated risks. At what point will I be saving somebody in a hotel of that kind? Now, I've given this part of the story because it drives into how we hire people, you know. And I would say, out of all these things, I was purely being hired based on confidence. It had nothing to do with my skill. Nobody ever took the risk to know what uh, behind the scenes, what due diligence they could have undertaken. Now, fast forward, I would want us to bring us to the topic of today, which is the construction part. And in construction, we have two people. The main players are number one, the dream carrier, who is the client, and number two, the contractor, who is the implementer of the dream. And at this point, can allow me to share the screen. All right. So I've talked about the dreamer, the dream carrier, and the contractor. Now, these two people must be in agreement before these two people must be in agreement for our project to be complete. Should they not be in agreement, you can see the scenario on the side, on the right. This is what happens. Either there was no discussion, either there was there's always this thing which happens in construction and you never understand how and why. Nilikuambia uweke sink na urinal in this room, and because there is space constraints or some form of disagreement, this is what ends up. Anyway, I'm here to give you uh, if we don't get this part correct, then how do we go about it? Number one, you have to have the components of the project. There are three people, or rather in construction, there are three main resources required. Number one is the human resource who drives the rest of who drives the project. Then number two, there is materials, and number three, the equipment. At the point of human resource, the first person you need on the ground is a consulting team. And the consulting team is basically the design team, which is the architect, the QS, the civil engineer, and services engineer. The architect will highlight or give you what is expected um, for the design to succeed. The architect mainly concentrates on the aesthetics, and he gives you the actual picture of how the the project, or if it's a house you're building, how the house will look like. Then the QS will give you the actual cost of that project. There's always a scientific way of knowing the exact cost of a house. And he also handles contractual matters. And this is a very critical person in the project, because the QS highlights and gives you the actual details of what that project will entail. And then there is a civil engineer. There are two types of engineers. There is a civil, the one who deals with the structure and the safety of the building. Then there is engineer services. I have combined and called him services because There's a combination of electrical and mechanical and structured cabling. They fall under services. So their part is mainly to the services engineer is to put in the facilities which makes the place usable. Now, on the part of materials, and this is where we have the biggest challenge. There is the element of sand, ballast, cement, stones, timber, and all that. Now, I have highlighted them because these are the key components used in construction, and this is where I'll use the word cheating happens the most. And this is where people lose their money. One, there is the element of, for example, if you keep wondering, why would somebody sell you 13, if it's, yes, sand, 13 tons of sand cost you 18,000 shillings, and another supplier brings you 13 tons of sand and it's costing 26 or 30,000, and you're wondering what's the difference in between. Now, there are several types of sand. You will even end up having sand soil which is coated with sand, and this is those are now the shortcuts being used in the industry. Or you have sand which is mixed or aerated. Aerated means you see a truck. It's at the point of loading, it loaded 6 tons, but on the road you find it being heaped or being, you see guys at the back of a truck. I don't know whether you've experienced that, where you see guys with spades at the back of a truck and kind of consolidating the sand. They are not consolidating it, they are aerating it. They're bringing air into the sand so that it looks, it looks blown up. Now, when you're buying the two, see the trucks looking the same size, but in the end, one is half of the other. So that is where you lose your money. If it's ballast, I'll put a truck there. If you notice very carefully, that truck does not have the actual bottom of that truck. It's compromised. The height of that, the inside, on the outside body, you will see that it's complete. But on the inside, they have put like a form of a platform. So the truck will look full. But in actual sense, yes, it is full when you see it on the ground, but the quantity of ballast it's carrying is probably half, because half of it has been sold on the road and they have put a platform inside so that it is elevated. Now you will end up buying ballast thinking that you bought a full truck. Now, stones, you have stones which are delivered in different, not sizes, but in different quality of stone. You'll go to the quarry and buy a stone of 11 shillings, 18 shillings, 25 shillings, and 30 shillings. All these depend on where the stone was mined and probably the sizing. But more about it is you have soft stone, which if it's rained on, it basically inakaa kama matope. So like the stones which are at the top, when the quarry is being mined for the first time, that stone is ni mud, imeshikanishwa tu. So you'll never know when you're buying the wrong thing if you're not in that industry. Timber, we end up having the same story where you can actually buy cypress. Cypress is softwood, but there are specialists in the industry who will stain cypress to look like mahogany, and you will buy cypress thinking that you're buying mahogany, or the thickness or the gauge of that timber is compromised, so you end up buying something you were not actually, you thought you were buying. Now, in a situation where you decide you're the fundi and you want to go to Gikomba and buy the timber yourself, there's a way those guys who are selling the timber there compromise on the foot, the actual measuring instrument, the tape, is cut in the middle and then rejoined. So at the beginning, you will see it is 0. At the end, you will see it has a measurement of probably, say 16 feet. But if you use the same footage with another one which is not compromised, you realize you have lost probably 2 feet in between. So those are tricks used in the industry for the person on the other side to gain. Now, same with steel. Steel, you'll see steel looking like a normal steel, but we have steel which has been recycled. So it does not achieve the actual strength of the steel you would expect in the industry. And so when you're going to buy, you go to a shop and they tell you, ninauza Y16 1600, and you go to another shop unauziwa Y16 2500. Unasema hapana, me I want this one is cheaper. But what you're actually buying is compromised steel. Now, those are the areas I think people lose, particularly things like doors. I run, I've been a victim of this door industry, and actually that's how come I ended up being a manufacturer in this field. You find a door, a flash door, if you look at it, it looks pure. It has the skin, it has everything, it has the measurements right. But in it, what matters is what is inside that door. There are those who load the door with timber material inside. There are those who do dust, the timber dust. And there are others who go as far as putting pits of sand inside the door so that the door looks heavy or feels heavy. So when you're buying your door, you think you've actually bought a door based on the looks and how fine it looks, but it's the inside which matters. So you find somebody selling you a door at 2,000, and another similar door is 4,500, and you wonder, how does this come about? So these are all areas which are compromised. Tiles, you end up having the same thing. It has the same code and everything, but then the tiles have different qualities. There is first grade and second grade, and even third grade. These are the tiles when they are laid on the floor, the spacing between the tiles is compromised. You start wondering, I I called a shop and I gave them tile code this. So at that point, the fundi has given you the first quality price, but when he's going to buy, he buys second quality or third quality tile, and you find that there is a problem in between. So you wonder, I bought tile, I'm the one who went to buy the tiles. What has happened? So these are some of the shortcuts used. Now, we talked about the third element is our tools used in construction. I may not dwell so much on that end because tools are tools, and this is more of, if you don't have the right equipment, you can't do the right job in the right way. This is why you find some projects take long. For example, you wanted to do an excavation for a building. I know in Ushago, you may not have the luxury of getting equipment like excavators, but you can imagine how long it will take to do an excavation, to do a building which has a basement. So you have to have the correct tools to enable you deliver a project of any size. You just need to have the correct equipment. Now, before I go into all these parts, we need to look at why do projects fail and at what point should we arrest them. Now, I talked about the consultants required in the industry, and a key component of that element of the personnel required, an architect is actually number one. You must, whatever the project you want to handle, please involve consultants. You must at least have the three. That is an architect, a QS, and an engineer. The architect will advise you based on the design so that you don't have again to come up with a lot of variations or design changes with time. An architect has worked through this industry for a while, so he's able to advise you on several aspects. He's able to see beyond what you see. His design is based mainly on the use of the facility. Where is the building located? You've seen buildings being demolished simply because they have been done at the wrong place. So an architect, it's upon him to find out whether this land is designed to have this kind of a facility. Then, at a rough estimate, an architect should be able to give you, based on the rule of rate per square meter, he can advise you what is the cost of a project even before you engage a QS. Then an architect can advise you on the period of construction, how long a project should take. He'll advise you on the bylaws, whether the building you're doing at that particular area conforms with the city planning or the planning elements in that type. Then they also have to look at the soil conditions. This is just to enable you come up with the correct size of the building, and you get to get value for your money. Now, a QS most of the time will give you the actual cost of the project, and he will specify the materials to be used so that again you don't fall into this issue of I ordered for mahogany timber but the contractor delivered cypress. So he'll advise you on that. And then there's one key element which most people forget is that any contract you enter into, please have very clear, detailed, and a detailed contract is normally designed or done by a QS. He gives you detail by detail of what is expected. Now, there are people who interchange fundi and contractor. They don't know at what point I'm using a fundi and I'm using a contractor. A contractor is basically one who puts all the things together. He looks at the full aspect of the contract of the project. A fundi, is specific. Mimi ni mason, mimi ni Tyler, mimi is one thing. And it's always advisable to use a contractor in a scenario of that. Na ndio hapo ndio tunasema sio bora fundi, ni fundi bora. Always look for fundi bora. Now, there are also those who make a big mistake and say, mimi niko na foreman kwa site, therefore my project will run. That is one of the biggest, that is hanging yourself. Now, what you should understand is that a foreman is basically a player in the field. So you cannot have a player who also becomes the referee. The person who oversees a project cannot be the one supervising the project. And that's why you need an architect. Come the worst, get somebody else who has been in the industry long enough to come and oversee what is being done. It is just a rider. From the way I've presented, construction looks like an extreme sport. It is just beyond you in terms of if you have not been in that industry. It can really take a lot of your time. And even if you think you are running the project, you'll still make losses, because you are not in the industry to understand the nitty-gritties. And therefore, you need people who have been in the industry long enough to run the show. Now, having put all these things, I've shown the wrong side of the whole thing. I had a situation at one point for where I worked for a client. This is like the year 2000, and the French embassy approached me, or rather, they called me for an assignment, and I ended up doing the job. And when I presented my invoice, they were not sure whether I have actually done the right job. I presented a cost of about 4,000 shillings. I remember because it was a job to do with plumbing, and personally, I'm a plumber, so I did the job myself. When I presented the quote, this Mzungu, the Frenchman, asked me whether indeed I have done the job I was expected to do. And he told me, give us a guarantee and we will pay you in a week or two. And I said, I'm comfortable with that. So a week later, they called me to give me the payment, and which they did. But then he went ahead and asked me uh, what really I did, which I gave the full write up. Then behind his desk, he pulled a paper to show me the actual project, the actual amount they had budgeted for that project. It was more than 100,000. And this same job had been visited by another contractor, so to speak. And he had given his quotation and it had been approved. So what happened is that this Mzungu, at the time he had given me the assignment, is because the other contractor was missing. He was not available for that job at that time. He had widened the scope to cover very many things, which, in my view, were not necessary, but it was a way of making money. So, what I'm saying is, there are situations where a contractor sees a job and decides for this job to look big or for me to make maximum money out of it, I will enlarge the scope. So this Mzungu at that point gave me an idea, and he told me something profound, that they have a lot of work, but the construction industry is full of not just shortcuts, but I'll put it like thuggery, or there's a lot of greed. I'll use that word, greed. And if they can get a contractor who is genuine, somebody who's truthful, they'll never finish their work. Or rather, there is too much work for somebody who is just honest. In fact, and he told me this, that if you are a contractor and you become honest, you'll be too busy. You will never lack work. And I learned one lesson, that from my side, if only I can be honest, I can do honest dealings in construction, I'll have more than enough work. And believe you me, for 14 years, I worked for the French embassy, and not just the French embassy. I ended up working for the European Union. So I understood now what it means. It is construction is one of the easiest fields as long as you're truthful, as long as you just say what it is. I will not sell you a door for 2,000 shillings because this is what I will compromise if you want me to sell it to do it at 4,000. And I will not do your building because for me to do your building and take it to the stable ground, I will need to go 2 meters down instead of 1.1 meter. I'll make it cheaper if I do it 1 meter excavation, but I'll do it right by going 2 meters deep. So it will cost you this much. So sometimes as clients, we have the people who have engaged or compromised our own project by looking at who is the cheapest in the industry, and therefore we cut ourselves short. Now, if I don't have a job and you are telling me you'll give me this job at 10,000 and I don't have a job, yet I know 10,000 will not do the job, I'll say yes. Then I look for shortcuts to deliver the job. One scenario, and I'll take you back, is a situation where I was given a swimming pool to build. Never mind, I had never known how a swimming pool is done. This pool was being done inside a national park, somewhere in a small world, and it was being used for shooting a movie, Survival Africa series, and they were Italians. So I did not go to meet these Italians for the concept or for the swimming pool, but I'd gone for to do something different. But in the process, I had them talking about they need a swimming pool done, and I gave them a quote of about 3 million, and I was given the job based on the price. Now, when it got to the ground, things were different. I discovered not just underquoted. It was impossible to deliver the project with 3 million. But guess what? I decided to take the shortest cut ever in my life. Build a swimming pool using just stones. A swimming pool is done based on concrete and steel and all that. Nonetheless, the contract was delivered on time. I came to understand later that they had engaged even bigger companies, like Davis and Shatleaf and all that. People were involved in the industry, and they were giving quotes of not less than 50 million, 40 million, 30 million. And I was doing at 3 million. What I had just engaged was chimba shimo, weka mawe, and tiles. That was it. Anyway, to cut the long story short, immediately after they had finished the assignment, 2 weeks later, the entire swimming pool collapsed. So this is about, mimi ninahitaji pesa, and at the end of the day, the client will, whatever the client gets, I don't care. Now, uh, I'll go back to what we need to do so that you salvage this situation.
Yes.
Hope is not lost, and I want to indicate that once you have engaged with the consultants, choosing the right contractor is about the checking the capacity, that's the experience, and whether he has the equipment to deliver the job. Uh, the contractor who understands the clarity of a contract, a contractor who will be able to mobilize personnel and resources, and then very key, a contractor who can do the job and get partial payments, or who will be paid based on the work done. That ties him to give quality. And then very, very, very important, somebody who can have indemnity, professional indemnity, that is insurances covered. And then find out, is this person certified by the regulatory bodies? Then, at the end, please pay for the job done. Now, I've shared something here uh, just to indicate to you that it may look like a surprise that 62% of the cement which is supplied in Kenya, which this is a study done by KEBS, is compromised. In other words, it does not meet the quality standards. What we are now saying is that 62% of the buildings you see around are compromised because the cement had been compromised. So it is not sometimes the mistake of the contractor, but there are also other elements which now drive the construction, or rather play a role in substandard work. So that is just one element I've highlighted. But also here I have put two, those are two bridges. One bridge is on near Utawala. You know, I I had a chance to take part in the construction of this bridge.
I
The reason
stopped
why
sharing it, so if your technician is there, he or she can share
sorry,
the screen. But if it's not very necessary, you can just go on
okay,
because
I've
we are.
put two bridges here. This is where I want to highlight about, it's not just about the contractor or the client, but also consultants play a big role in how the industry comes out. These two bridges, they are of the same size. One cost about 60 million, and the same bridge, this one is in Ngara, cost about 150 million. Now ask yourself, these two bridges are almost similar, or rather they have same span. Why is one about 50, 60 million, the other one is 100? The thing is, contract or consultants are paid based on the size of the project, the cost of the project. They get a percentage. So there is also a situation where, as a client, if the consultant wants to make his money, quote unquote, he decides to over design so that it has a higher cost, and at a higher cost, his percentage grows. So bridge one and the bridge one above is just the same bridge. Bridge two, you can see the element of steel, you know, so much steel so that you can make money out of this steel. That is where this that's how also consultants play a role in the industry. In other words, they want to make more money from the whole thing. So it's a man eat man society, as we call it. With this, I want to say thank you very much. Sorry, I overran on time. If there are questions,
Yeah, yeah. No worries. We can move straight to questions because we've run out of time. One, somebody has asked, what's the right ratio of sand, cement, uh, dust for both plastering and stonework? And then also Antonia, oh, that was Antonia also. Also, Antonia has asked, could you mention something about quality of flat roof? So those are two
okay.
things. Mm.
The ratios are dependent. We call them classes. There is class 20. Actually, you start from class 15, class 20, class 25, class 30. So there is no standard ratio for, it depends on where you are using the that it depends on what exactly you're doing. If you're doing a slab, you use class 25, some use class 30, depending on the height of the building or what you want to achieve, what is going to be placed on that slab. If it's an industrial slab, you can do as much as class 30, or there are cases like a bridge, you go up to class 35. So a standard ratio, we use a ratio of 1.5 to 3 to 2. I'll be misleading you if I tell you use this ratio, because it depends on where you're using it. Now, flat roofs is an issue which is very disturbing in most cases, but it's not a problem to treat. Number one, you need to have an adequate slope. That is a very key element in treating as a slab, so that anytime you have water which is draining, you expect water to find its way, so it will leak. But if it's running, then you don't expect it to stay, or rather to leak. But also very critical is you need to use the right waterproofing elements, and they're available in the industry. So it's a matter of, actually, you need to use a specialist, a waterproofing specialist for flat roofs. There are those who tell you waterproofing ile unanunua kwa duka. That is not exactly what, because you have to have the right ratios. So it is best to get somebody who, there are companies who just do waterproofing. Yeah. I hope I've answered, but it's just
Okay,
with you
thank you.
because of
Because
time.
that also goes hand in hand with what Patrick asked about how can one make flat roof last longer and not leak. You need a flat roof specialist. Then
Yes.
there is also someone asked. I've seen a question here. Please comment. Please comment on one architect site visit fee and final cost of building. Two, requirements to repaint a building every, hey, it's jumped. A building every 3 or 4 years as a standard
Yes.
maintenance policy. Maybe short answers on that because time.
Yes, it's paramount to have, because as we talked, architects are the people who actually supervise the project. They know what they had designed, and therefore they should be the people to check on what they designed is what is actually being implemented. Because I am sure, as the client, you and the architect are the people who sat down to decide how the building should come up. So an architect is advised at least to visit the site after every 2 weeks minimum. Minimum. Reason, because that is the period within which you have significant work, so that you don't do too much to redo the work. Again, it enables you to plan ahead in terms of progress. So, and then the cost of a project, or rather an architect, I think the fees for the entire team is about 7%. I could be wrong, but it should be about 7%, the fee for of the project, of the cost of the project, which should not be much compared to what you will save if you the saving, that saving is enough if you were to do repeat works. I've
Okay.
seen situations where they have chased away
Mm,
the consultants.
yeah, Houseman, I'd like us to do this for the sake of Power Monday. There are lots of questions. I'd like you to stay behind so that you can answer some of the questions that you will be able to answer. You also put your contact there, because we have to we have to close this by, 8:15. So I want to call somebody to give a vote of thanks. Then we close the official part, and then we can move on to answer some of the questions, because there are quite many, Furious. So just stay back, and the people with questions, please kindly stay back. Uh, I wanted to call. Is Christine from UK. You are also in the building industry.
Yes, good morning to you all.
Good morning.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Thank you for the chance to be able to offer the vote of thanks to the gentleman. So this is a very, very complex industry, as he would say, and my heart goes out for people who go out to be able to undertake such complex industry undertakings. It is not a walk in the park with construction, and for really him to be able to come and share the insights with us, we would have required a whole week's training, I believe. However, despite the short time that he has shared, I really want to appreciate him on behalf of the team and the listeners today, and say thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and also your experience with everyone. As we know, we still have a lot to learn, and it's my prayer that you will accept people to engage you further, not just to share the knowledge, but also in the consultations, and also to involve you in their constructions, because we're trying to grow each other in the group. I've personally benefited from the members who have shared here, consultancies, and it's out of this sharing that you make business and grow yourself as well. So we hope that the members who are undertaking the constructions, buildings, will engage you, and from this forum, and that would be a way that we can say we have benefited not just by the knowledge, but also by giving you work. Personally, I will engage you as well, as this is my industry, I'm not a constructor myself, but I'm a beneficiary to the real estate, and I pray that we'll engage further. So please receive our heartfelt thanks on behalf of Mr. Ropipi and the entire Power Mandate team, which is a very hardworking team. Feel that we appreciate you wholeheartedly. Thank you so much, and may God really bless your hard work, your business, and everything that entails your success journey going forward. Have a blessed day, and thank you, everybody. Bye.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, and good to note that Evans Houseman, he calls himself Houseman. That's the name of his organization. Has subscribed for the dinner. So all the people who will be at the dinner, you will be there to ask all the questions. Antonia, you can give any announcement and